Hello, and welcome to Yes to Holiness podcast. I'm Christina Simmons, your host, and today I have a wonderful guest with me who's going to talk to you about a phenomenal initiative that's going on with Word on Fire and University of St. Thomas in Houston. But before we get to all that, Dr. Tom Harmon, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Oh, well, thank you. I know you're kind of doing a press junket a little bit, doing a whole bunch of different podcasts and interviews. So I appreciate you squeezing us in, particularly because of the novel way that this initiative is happening. So I want to get to that. But before we do, could you share a little bit with our listeners just about where you are today, in a practical way, but then also what's your faith journey been so that you've gotten to where you are today?
I'm in Texas right now, physically. So my university is the University of St. Thomas in Houston. But I grew up in Seattle, and I did my graduate studies in Florida. So I've been sort of at both ends and in the middle of the country.
Mhm.
Um, I'm a cradle Catholic. I went to Catholic schools my entire life. And One of the things that I found is that Catholic schools can be both helpful and not very helpful. Because if, like me, you were, this was just kind of the air you breathe, is Catholic schools, um, it's possible not to reflect on the faith almost at all.
Mhm.
Um, if it's just sort of something that is part of your daily environment, it's something you can easily lose sight of and take for granted. And I think that happened for me. Certainly no fault of my parents, who were great. They were devout and wanted to raise me well. Um, but Also, the Archdiocese of Seattle is a very secular place,
Mhm.
and the schools were fairly secular as well. And so it was a little bit of a shock for me when I went to Gonzaga as an
Mhm.
undergraduate, as a Jesuit school. And up to that point, I didn't really know that you could be a Catholic and not really agree with some of the most prominent teachings of the church. And so that was, I think, I fit the dictionary definition of scandalized when I got there. I couldn't believe that what I was hearing from my fellow students, from my professors, from some of the Jesuit priests there, and that really forced me to think more deeply about what it meant to be a Catholic, because I was confronted there for the first time with many different people who claimed to be Catholic but believed very different things.
Mhm.
And so that's really when I started having thoughts that I might have an intellectual vocation in the church.
Mhm.
Is when I tried to figure out all of those competing claims, and a lot of them were doctrinal, but some of them were moral as well. And so I had to decide whether I wanted to pursue those questions in philosophy or theology. I was a philosophy undergraduate major,
Mhm.
and I took a couple years off to figure it out. And in that period, got engaged, and uh, ended up going to grad school in theology, because I thought that well, if I'm going to figure out what it is, what's at the bottom of these competing claims, I really should go to the ultimate reality, which is God and what is revealed about God. And so that's what sent me to graduate school in theology.
Mhm.
And I've viewed myself as having a kind of an academic vocation in the church ever since. But that it's in itself, maybe as you might know, brings with it its own challenges. The challenges of being a professional Catholic, right?
Mhm.
That um, It's hard to kind of do something similar at home to what you do at work. And
Mhm.
so if you're constantly thinking about, Catholic things, then actually that brings with it its own special challenges to fostering a life of devotion as well.
Mhm.
Um, so uh, I think that's the sort of thing that professional Catholics have to deal with, is you're doing churchy things all day. What can you do in order to make sure that it's not just a professional relationship that you have with Jesus Christ?
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Totally can identify with that. I went to Marquette, so Jesuit connection there. For me, we had during that time frame, we had one professor that was nationally known for him taking a stance against particular teachings of the church, and but that being said, the administration and the Jesuit priest community there were very strongly saying, no, we don't agree with this, but because of intellectual freedom, we're allowing this conversation to happen on campus. But I love, I too, began, I was history and I was going double major in philosophy. And then after I took a couple of philosophy classes, I'm going, no, I can't argue everything. Therefore, I need something. So I did the double major in theology. So I can identify, with that desire to have the real reality, and then we can talk everything else. I find it fascinating that this initiative, so let's jump into that a little bit, because I think that will explain kind of how you got to be where you are right now. But this initiative between the Word on Fire Institute and the University of St. Thomas in Houston, so what was really the driver behind its creation? And let's just kind of start there.
Sure. Well, so I should say at the outset that I can talk about Word on Fire, but I'm not an employee, so I can't speak
Hmm.
for them. But the relationship really started a couple years ago when Bishop Barron was our commencement speaker at St. Thomas, and I think at that point there were people here, both on faculty and in our administration, especially our president and our vice president for academic affairs, who really thought that the approach Bishop Barron was taking was a really fruitful one for the church in America right now, and wanted to have more of a relationship with him, and kind of seek for ways to institutionalize his approach at UST, to make it kind of part of the fabric of what we do.
Hmm.
And at the same time, I think that Bishop Barron and some of his people had been wondering for a little bit about how they could level up their educational offerings. And so
Hmm.
it was sort of a natural fit. It took a couple of years to figure out how everything would work, because this sort of relationship doesn't happen very often, where there's an academic institution that partners with an outside unaccredited institution to offer a degree.
Hmm.
Um, but the desire and the need was there, and so just this past fall, both Word on Fire and St. Thomas gave the go-ahead to design a program, which then our board of trustees just approved in March, which led to the launch. So it was really kind of a desire to have an accredited degree program that functions as like almost like a capstone experience to a discipleship under Bishop Barron.
Hmm.
We figure there's only one of him, and that means there's only one of him to go around. But his approach is so fruitful,
Hmm.
that we thought that we needed to be educating people in that approach so that they can act in the world in ways similar to Bishop Barron.
Hmm. Yeah. So kind of digging into that a little bit more for people who might not be familiar, what exactly would you say is the approach of Bishop Barron specifically, that you guys are trying to capture in a more formalized sense?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so many people will be familiar with him from his social media appearances,
Hmm.
right? So you can sort of get a sense of his approach just from listening to him, right? He's always very interested in finding the good
Hmm.
in the surrounding environment, right? So formally, he calls that looking for the seeds of the word.
Hmm.
And what that means is that even in the most hostile cultures, there are still these traces of God's truth that can be found, and a diligent seeker can find them and cultivate them, and those can function as, in a way, the authentic um, uh, core of whatever culture that is, that reaches all the way up to our Lord. And so so that's why there needs to be an emphasis both on culture and evangelization, because
Mm.
you actually need to know the context in which you are evangelizing. You need to know what the resources are that are already available for you, and you also need to know pretty well the countervailing forces that you'll have to deal with. What are the things that shape people's ability to receive and respond to the gospel? Because some of those factors will be wonderful contributors to their ability to receive and respond, and some of them will make it very difficult, if not impossible, to respond without meeting those challenges head on. So we think that pairing evangelization and culture, like Bishop Barron does,
Mhm.
is very important.
Mhm.
And of course, the other thing that's, I think, pretty obvious from his approach is that he's got this very kind of dynamic orthodoxy. So
Mhm.
he's orthodox, but he does have a kind of let a thousand flowers bloom approach, right? So if it's orthodox, he's a fan, okay, and that's what we want to be. Also, there's lots of divisions and polarization in our church, um, but we want to say that if it's faithful, then and
Mhm.
then we want to support it. And so, but he's very Christocentric, right? Is always very much focused on Christ. And actually, I have a little bit of a funny story about that. The first
Mhm.
student that I admitted to the program's name is Jesus. So, so even in our academic program, we have begun with Jesus, just as Bishop Barron would want. Um,
Mhm.
but uh, um, but also he's got a very broad and profound engagement with the whole of Catholic culture. And so he and our program is not just interested only in theology,
Mhm.
but also in art and literature, also in history, also in even politics, right? So all of these things shape our ability to hear and respond to the gospel. And so Bishop Barron's interested in all of those things, even down to the level of doing movie and TV reviews, right? Which
Mhm.
was sort of near to my heart, because I sort of
Mhm.
moonlight as a movie and TV reviewer also. So
Mhm.
so yeah, nothing's too mundane for the attention of the evangelist. And I think
Mhm.
Bishop Barron shows that really well.
And I think that's so important, that we do focus on, and it's part of why I've always been a big fan of Word on Fire myself, is because of exactly that, of finding the good and the beautiful, particularly, which then leads you to the truth, and those seeds of the Word. And but nowadays, particularly within church circles, you hear evangelization talked about quite often, but most people that I have found don't know how to practically go about doing it. So, how might this program, you're taking culture, understanding why people are going to perhaps hesitate or not be able to respond to the word, when it's proclaimed to them, but how is this going to teach people that skill?
Mhm.
Because you can have a lot of head knowledge, but if you're not able to go out and implement it's kind of, useless in many regards.
Yeah, yeah.
How is this going to approach that?
So one of the things I think we want to do is to show people how many different ways there are to evangelize.
Mm,
So we think of evangelization as like doing things like, I don't know, like street preaching or something like that, right?
mhm,
And that's certainly within the ambit. That's great. But there are
mhm,
other ways to do it also. And so one of the things we want to do is to show people in history how how Catholics have evangelized and how they've engaged their own cultures. So, for instance, we'll be running a course this summer called Dante the Evangelist.
mhm,
So obviously you can read Dante as a great poet and a great thinker in his own right, but our specific charism will be to look at what he was doing as an attempt to evangelize.
mhm,
Um, you can look at not just poetry, but art and architecture that way as well. Um, this is also, I think, why we have this focus on new media, is that maybe you're not the one who's crafting the message, but you might be the one who knows um, how to do the audio engineering that makes the podcast run smoothly, right?
Right.
And so, so a lot of it is we want to show people how people have done this before,
Mhm.
to give them patterns to imbibe, and then to kind of reflect on in themselves,
Mhm.
and then see what gifts they've been given. And so I think one thing we want to do is to help facilitate people's ideas about these things. So, I'm a professor. I live in the ivory tower. And so I am not going to come across multifaceted opportunities for evangelization, but my students will. And so one of the things is that I want to help my students think through those opportunities in the context of our program, so they can sort of come here, learn from the great evangelists and the great surveyors of culture in the past, and get themselves deeply inserted into the Catholic intellectual tradition, into scripture, and then take that formation and that education to whatever it is in their particular circumstances that they're experiencing.
Mhm. Yeah, what I have found is that with my own journey, is that the more that I have been formed, especially intellectually, um, is that then continues to help me be able to have a broader perspective of where the gospel is. So it's like I start seeing connections that other people are like, how did you see that? And it's like, how can you not see it? It's like, once you've, put on the eyeglasses of Christ, you're seeing him everywhere. But one of the things that I admired about the Word on Fire Institute was that they were trying to address those things, and they were doing things about, how is Dante, showing, the faith, and how is that, so what might be a few typical courses that students, if they were to enroll in this program, that they might experience, and then I also want to talk about this summer immersion experience, because I
Yeah.
think that's what's different too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So this program is not going to be a program that it's not like a Bishop Barron studies, right? So you're not just
Mhm.
going to read his books or watch his lectures or things like that. But we will have one course in it. It's called The
Mhm.
Theology of Bishop Robert Barron. So
Mhm.
so that's going to be offered in the fall. But we've also got a sequence of courses that are patterned after the transcendentals of truth, goodness, and beauty.
Mhm.
And so those are basically the truth course is about philosophy and apologetics. The goodness course is about ethics and moral theology. And the goodness course is about art, poetry, and architecture.
Mhm.
And and of course, that's a big approach of Bishop Barron, is an emphasis on the transcendentals.
Mhm.
But then also we've got a course on reading for evangelists, which is
Mhm.
about how people have written for evangelization in the past. And that's going to be taught by, especially the first time, by Dr. Holly Ordway, who's
Mhm.
a great scholar of J.R.R. Tolkien.
Mhm.
And I think that she's got such an interesting take on these things, because, of course, nobody would have maybe guessed or thought that Tolkien would have been doing direct evangelization, right? There
Mhm.
was some question by many of his readers, is this even a Catholic work, right?
Right.
But we do think that it absolutely is, and there's something to be learned from the way that he approaches things. So those are sort of like some of the mainstay courses. We've got elective courses as well that people can take. There's going to be, spirituality for evangelists,
Mhm.
a course on patristics for evangelists,
Mhm.
one we're calling anthropology for evangelists, which takes a look at
Mhm.
the whole of the human person, from
Mhm.
our biological makeup all the way up to our psychology and spirituality.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of fun things that we're going to be doing, I think. And
Mhm.
this is just the beginning too. My counterpart at Word on Fire Institute is Matthew Petrusik, and he and I have a lot of ideas that we want to implement after the stage one implementation too. So I think there's a lot of exciting places we can go in the future as well.
Mhm.
So this program, I think it's going to be pretty fun. I think it's pretty unique.
Mm. No, definitely. And speaking to that uniqueness, there is a summer immersion experience. Could you describe that just real briefly for people? Because most people think, hey, I'm going to go and get a theology degree, and I'm taking coursework, not, hey, I'm going to show up and I'm going to have an immersive experience.
Yeah, yeah. So we are offering this online. Okay,
Hmm.
so now the distinctive difference for us is that all of the courses we offer online are live. So they're
Hmm.
synchronous, like we're doing right now. You and I are
Right.
on Zoom speaking together live, and that's how a class will be with professors and students. But also, we think that the flesh is really important, and we're
Mhm.
embodied beings, and we need to get together because we want this to be an academic experience, but we're also hoping that there will be friendships that come
Mhm.
out of it, and hopefully projects as well. I mean, when you get lots of bright people together who are interested in evangelization and culture, I
Mhm.
think that's going to be a very fertile ground for thinking about new initiatives.
Totally
And
agree.
so I think that really has to happen in person though. And
Hmm.
so every year we're going to have a week long event in the summer, which will bring as many of our students and professors together as we can get. It won't be required, but it will be, I keep telling people it's heavily recommended.
Hmm.
So they'll come here to the University of St. Thomas, and we're gonna go from 10 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. So it really will be intense.
Hmm.
And we'll have meals together, we'll go to mass together, and we'll have lectures and seminars and workshops on kind of cutting edge topics in culture and evangelization. And we're going to try to get some of the brightest, most interesting speakers and also doers to come and talk to us about things.
Hmm.
For instance, Matt Petrusik and I have been talking about this very interesting turn that Bishop Barron has taken recently, where he's started talking much more about the role that institutions have in
Hmm.
evangelization, both pro and con.
Right.
And so that's going to be a big topic for us, I think, both this summer and next summer. Um, and so um, the other thing is in the evening after dinner, we're going to have a fellowship hour as well, where we have snacks and drinks, and it's just a time to kind of be together and have conversations that are more casual and spontaneous.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be a week long on campus here, and I'm really looking forward to those.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely phenomenal. What you're describing is similar to I went through the Catholic Spiritual Mentorship Program that's done in Kansas City, Kansas. Dr. Mike Schurslicks, Troy Hinkle, under Archbishop Naumann. And one of the huge components of it was we came together during the course of the 2 years, came together 4 different times for a week at a time. And that month of live life together is absolutely transformative. And you're right, it is an incubator of creativity and synergy. And no, definitely. But so often we forget how important it is for us to come together and to live life together, and to share and to build those friendships, because those will continue
Mhm.
afterwards. And so I'm so glad to hear that. What kind of people in general? I mean, it's not like a specific, but who are the people that you're hoping are going to consider participating in this program? Mhm.
So really the only thing that I'm looking for is somebody who has a heart for evangelization in the way that Bishop Barron is interested in doing it. So, and that can take a lot of different forms as well.
Mhm.
So I don't have an ideal type that I'm looking for. And sure enough, in the early applications, we haven't seen a common type applying
Mm.
at all. There's a
Awesome.
vast variety of people actually, both in terms of age. I've had 22 to 82,
Mm-hmm.
geography, people all across the country and also from Europe as well.
Hmm.
Some from South America, and from all different professions. So some people are involved in, work for the church, either in education or in some ministry for a diocese, or some are clergy, some are lay. But I've got professional people also, bankers and financiers and lawyers.
Hmm.
So there are people who I think are taking it because they just want to know more about their faith and about how to share it.
Hmm.
And so there's no like one size fits all student for this program. It's really kind of all comers. And I think that's going to be one of its strengths as well, because I really want this to be a place where lots of different types of people can come, and it will be the mix that
Hmm.
will be fertile, I think.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly how Christ did it, didn't he?
Yeah, very different
No,
types.
had a few more fishermen than the average,
Yeah.
out of the initial, cast of the net, but even they were vastly different. And so, what are the hopes for this program going forward? This is not a one-time thing, but rather you're trying to build something that's going to continue. So, what are the hopes for this program?
Well, I think the main hope is, since there's really only one Bishop Robert Barron, we want to be able to teach a lot of people about how to approach things like he does. And so the main hope is really just to give people that formation. Um, so if there's only one Bishop Barron to go around, the least we can do is to um, give people a better chance of operating like him.
Mhm.
But like I said, I do hope that there are friendships and initiatives that come out of this as well. I also hope that this becomes a place for the church to think through problems associated with evangelization and culture. I hope it becomes a kind of laboratory. It's not uh, we do think that we have some answers to give people from the past, but we don't have all the answers about how to engage our current culture. And
Mhm.
so, part of what's exciting about this, I think, is that we're going to be coming together, all of us, and trying to figure things out.
Mhm.
And so, I do hope that we're able to generate some new responses to the culture,
Mhm.
and to generate some new ways of evangelizing that work well. Um, and of course, at the bottom of everything, we hope that through this kind of study, people will grow closer to Jesus and his church.
Mm. Amen. So if nothing else but that happens, it'll be a success. I know,
Yeah.
but I have firm faith that it's going to probably be that incubator, that place where so much comes because the Holy Spirit is being brought in to do the work. So, just a kind of a final question about the program. People can go and learn more by going where?
Yeah, so two things. There are a couple websites,
Hmm.
because both institutions are involved. Both Word on Fire and UST have websites. So the place to go at St. Thomas is www.stthom. That's
Hmm.
www.sttom.edu/MA Evangelization.
Got it.
And Word on Fire has a web page at the Word on Fire Institute, which is institute.wordonfire.org/MA dash evangelization dash and dash culture. But also,
Wow.
if people want to email me, that's fine too. I'm at
Okay.
harmontp@sttom.edu, HARMONTP at sttom.edu, or our admissions department is available also. That's admissions at sttom.edu.
Awesome. That sounds great. Just a couple of questions for you, because it's obvious that our Lord has been leading you along this journey. What has been the one habit or practice that you've had in your life that's been key for you to be able to live out the life God's called you to? Mhm.
So it's kind of a happy accident because I'm a professor, that I have or get to teach some of the really great works in
Mhm.
theology and spirituality. So at least once a year, in my class teaching, I have to read St. Augustine's Confessions.
Mm.
And I would say that being forced to read Augustine's Confessions at least once every year has been huge
Mhm.
for how I understand my faith, my relationship with Christ and the church, and the surrounding culture. So I'd say that has been really fruitful for me.
I can attest to it in my own life. So definitely. Now, I just wanted one final question because this is fun for me because I do the same thing. But you said that you kind of moonlight as a reviewer,
Yeah.
um, give folk, one book, one movie, one TV show that you would say, hey, you need to go watch these because and I'll put a twist on it because they will help you be able to see Christ more clearly.
Hmm. Oh boy. Okay. So
Yeah,
you said
challenging
book,
question.
you said book, movie, and TV show.
Yep, so one of each.
I'll start with the movie.
Mhm.
Everybody should watch Terrence Malick's Tree of Life,
Mm.
which I think is one of the most profound works of Christian art in our new century.
Mhm.
Um, he's not Catholic, he's close. So there are
Mhm.
some things that a Catholic could quibble with, but it is a profound Christian vision,
Mhm.
and a great work of art to boot.
Yeah.
Um, I would say, as far as a TV show,
Mhm.
there's less in TV. TV is very interesting these days.
Yes.
But I would say that one of my favorite television shows of the last 15 years is the first season of Stranger Things.
Ah, okay.
Not necessarily because of any positive Christian view of the world, but
Mhm.
because I think it encapsulates our situation very well. And so
Mhm.
one of the things to do with art is that the artist is, generally speaking, I think, sensitive to the contours of culture. And
Mhm.
so it's good to be aware of people who are popular artists because they can sort of reflect the culture back to you in a more kind of digestible way. And I think for me, the first season of Stranger Things did that.
Mm.
Book, well, I'm going to say The Lord of the Rings. I'm actually rereading The Lord of the Rings right now, and it's a source of just profound insights about human nature. And um, also, Tolkien, I think, speaks to a situation of decline better
Mhm.
than anybody else, and what is a spirituality that is capable of handling a situation of civilizational decline.
Mhm.
Um, so, needless to say, I think we're in that situation right now. So,
Mhm.
in the past, the culture itself has been confident, and has been involved in building up many good things, some bad things as well. But now I think that even the engine that the culture runs on is sputtering,
Mhm.
and that can be a hard thing to cope with, even if you didn't necessarily think that you were all that attached to the surrounding
Right.
culture. It can still be a gut check,
Mhm.
and Tolkien has a lot of resources to deal with that gut check.
Yeah. No, absolutely brilliant. So, um, I asked this question of everyone who comes on the show for the simple fact of it tends to be a good way for us to see, where we need to be focused. But if you could go back in time and share one piece of advice with your 18-year-old self, what would it be?
Stay off the internet more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, do more things um, in real life, in the flesh, with real people. I think I was
Mhm.
pretty successful with that, but I could have done more. And
Mhm.
and also, sort of corresponding to that, I was a little bit of a late adopter of smartphones. I didn't get a smartphone until, I forget, maybe 2011 or something like that. But
Mhm.
I would tell my 18-year-old self, when the smartphone comes along, be wary of it.
Yeah. No, I definitely can concur with that. So, but man, it's been such a pleasure. I really am excited for this program. I'm really excited for the opportunities that people who choose to participate in this are going to get from it. And I really want to thank you again for your time to be able to describe what it is that you're trying to do. And any new initiative needs tons of prayers. So please know of my continued prayers for all of this. Mhm.
Thank you very much. Well, it's been a real pleasure to be with you. So thank you for the conversation.
Uh, as always, it's definitely illuminating and encouraging and inspiring for me to hear of all the different things that are being done out in the world in order to bring Christ to others. So, thank you again. I appreciate it. For everyone who's out there listening, know of my continued prayers for each of you, especially that you may continue to do whatever it takes so that together we may tell the Master of Death, not today. God bless.